hello, hello. How you doing? Open the chat window.
Hello, just me
Hello.
lurking again.
Please lurk away. I'm all for a good lurk. How are you? Are you working at the moment?
I am working.
Yeah, great.
Trying to
How
multitask.
are you doing like these lessons? How are you finding them whilst you're working?
I tend to just lurk and then half watch and half do my other tasks.
Yeah. So you just sort of take in what you can.
Yeah. I'm not taking active notes or anything, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to pick up, especially areas where like I don't understand anything, and then I can go back and look at them again.
Yep. So you have some under basic knowledge.
Very basic, I'd say. Um, yeah, I was always really terrible at music theory. Come from a classical violin background, so
Yep.
I know some things, but I don't know as much as I should.
Yeah. I mean, do you still play?
Yeah, up until like 2 years ago, I'd say I was playing quite a bit, and then I stopped.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so that's fairly recent. So, and what do you think your weaknesses are when it comes to theory?
I never had like the foundation. I feel like 'cause when I learned music theory, like when I was younger, I just kind of didn't really care and did all the books and didn't really like take it seriously enough. So I think there are like gaps in my foundation.
That's funny.
Um, yeah, I was
That's
always
great.
the one who just like passed off my homework to like my friend who was a lot better than me, um, and she did it for me.
I feel like I had a friend that would give me things to do, but like very
Well,
similarly.
I was that friend to my friend. Yeah.
That's awesome. Funnily enough, theory was the first thing that I learnt before playing the piano. I taught myself my basic fundamentals of music theory, and then 2 weeks later, I started learning on a paper piano that I made in Microsoft Paint, and then
Microsoft Paint. That's
yeah, drew,
amazing.
drew it up. It was a good time. Yeah, it's a real sort of heartstring story, you know. But I'm a little music theory geek. I think like if you've got a basic understanding, you can explore more music.
Yeah,
Not
I
that
love that. See, I people always think that I should be good at music theory because I'm really technical and like
yeah.
I like all the nerdy stuff. But I'm really not.
Well, I guess it's quite a broad thing to be good at, isn't it? Because there's so many different facets.
I think
Um,
I've always gotten by, like I play a lot by ear and I've always gotten by with that.
yep,
But yeah, I'm pretty slack on the theory side of things.
that's okay. Thanks for letting me know, by the way, and feel free to use the chat as much as you can, and I'll actually make sure it's legitimately open because it keeps disappearing on me. Louis, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Had any questions arise since last lesson,
Mm,
or
Not
even
at the
just general
moment.
questions?
Yeah, I think honestly, like I'm just you know how like you go through stuff and then you're like, oh yeah, I didn't actually know how to. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. Just like listening in and going, oh, I wait a second. Yeah, I have thought about that question and I haven't remembered that I've thought about that question. Yeah, that's where I'm
Do you
at.
mean things have come up but then you've forgotten, or
No. What I mean is that like I didn't come in with questions last week,
yep,
and then I remembered that at the times when I have been practicing music that I have had certain questions which I then asked you.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of like
And now you're
I'm kind of
questionless.
currently, yeah, I feel like I start off questionless and then I'm paying attention. Then I'm like, oh wait, I did have that question that I've forgotten that I
Sure.
had the
Okay.
question.
Cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's great. Um, well, in any case, feel free to ask me as I go. I'm going to keep this pretty rudimentary. Hopefully a bit more of an extension on last Monday. Okay, I'm just checking. I've got Facebook going at the same time. It's all happening right now. Lots of
You're
bits
such a
and
tech
bobs
whiz, Daniele.
look, when there's a Daniele, there's a way.
Yeah.
And is it too much? More often than not, yes. But I'm just like I just love experimenting with stuff. So this is a great way to do it. So let's recap a little bit on a few major scale businesses. Better too much than too little. Yeah, that's fair, but my meditation teacher would say something different. So, well, she would say as long as you're fully embodied in there, it's okay. Okay. Can you hear the piano? It's giving me a little bit of a delay, and that's really annoying. Core MIDI, Roland, MIDI out. Awesome. Thanks, Louis. I love your hand signals. So, just a small recap on the structure of the piano. 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2, 3, 2, 3. Okay, it's just a big old pattern. There is a maximum of 12 individual notes, and then once you go over 12, you're just getting duplicates of the same note. They resonate in a very similar frequency, either double or half the 12 notes below it or above it, okay, depending. So when we go directly left adjacent of the first black note, we get C. Meanwhile, can you hear whilst I play? Can you? Yeah? Okay, just let me know. Sometimes it's just about proximity to the mic. So when I'm directly left of the first black note, I am chilling out in a C. When I'm directly adjacent to the first of the 3 black notes, I am at an F. Now, when I talk about adjacent notes, I am talking like what is directly next door. Absolutely next door, regardless of maybe what our perception might think is next door. What is actually next door is what is sort of touching that note. So E to E flat or E to F, they are adjacent notes. E to D, I would not consider them adjacent in this context. Because in a sense, I want to sort of break down things to the smallest components as far as like, again, Western tonal music is concerned. So we've got our C, and then from here to the next C will be 12 semitones. So we go, I will count the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. So 12 notes, and I'll play them all together. I will try. Beautiful, nice dissonance. Very Sondheim. There is our notes, okay? So that will keep repeating. And the distance between one note and the adjacent note is what we call a semitone or a halftone or a chromatic. Okay, the sort of different nomenclature for the sort of one idea. When you play them all in sequence, several notes played in a sequence is generally referred to as a scale, and several chromatics played in sequence or semitones or halftones is referred to a chromatic scale. Okay, depending on how many octaves you'd like to play it at, the chromatic scale can go, for the entirety of the piano if you like. Really good scale to practice. And if you are practicing it on the piano, generally speaking, you start with the 1 and the 3rd finger. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, and then 2. 2 for the adjacent white note. Weave in a bit of piano as we're going. Cool. All right. So major scale. Major scale is made up of our wonderful, amazing formula: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. All right. Now, tones and semitones are about distance. Okay, so we don't want to count the first note. We want to count where we're going. Just as, you know, if we're sort of measuring the distance between my house and Louis' house, we'd work out the kilometers in between. My house doesn't really count for any of those kilometers because I need to be going somewhere. So a bit of a terrible example, but, you know, hopefully you catch my drift. So we want to go C, tone. Tone is 2 semitones to D. Another tone to E. A semitone to F. A tone to G. Tone to A. Tone to B. Semitone to C. Everyone happy with that? Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, let's take a little detour to our minor scales. So every major scale has a minor component to it. At least that's how I like to look at it, rather than deriving a completely new formula to the minor scale. I'd rather just learn the major scale and then learn its associated minor relative. Okay, relative minor. Within the minor, there are three versions of it. Harmonic, natural, in no specific order, melodic. So raise 7th, raise 6th, raise 7th, and then naturalized on the way back. So we'll start with the natural because it's probably the easiest. Well, before we even start on that, the relative minor begins on the 6th degree of the major scale. So what is a degree? Every note in a major scale or in any scale has, we can refer to them in numbers, and then we refer to them specifically, those numbers equate to a scale degree. Okay, or a scale number. You could use those sort of interchangeably, but generally speaking, when we're talking about them in a theoretical context, we're talking about them as scale degree. So this is our major scale. Scale degree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. The 6, which is our A in this context, that's where we're going to build our minor scale from. So C, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Rather than starting up here, we generally look at it by going a minor third down, which we haven't really touched on intervals yet. That will do so at some point. The amount of semitones away are 3 semitones away from the major scale. So if I go down 3 semitones from a major scale, I've got the relative minor. The relevance of that is that the natural minor scale will incorporate all the notes of the major scale without altering any of these notes. The natural minor scale, all I need to do is play 8. Oh yeah, Louis, go for it.
So when you're saying relative minor and natural minor, you mean the same thing?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So think of it like this. Every major scale has a relative minor, and then within the relative minor, there are 3 different minor scales: natural, harmonic, and melodic. Yeah.
Okay, so it's an umbrella term. Cool.
Yeah, umbrella term. Thanks, Louis.
Yeah, great.
Good clarification question.
My other question is a little bit further ahead in this, but just because I understand that some things are labeled like Lydian and Mixolydian and things like this, and I wondered if there was a matchup between like harmonic, natural, and melodic minors and those terms.
Yeah. The natural minor can also be referred to as the Aeolian.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can build modes of the different scale degrees in the major scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so specifically, the 6th scale degree is referred to as the Aeolian mode if I build the natural minor from that space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the harmonic minor scale has its own modal system, of which I cannot remember what they're called. But I will actually look into that. Melodic minor, probably, I think they all have modes associated with them. But yeah, the natural minor is synonymous with the Aeolian. Good question.
Thank you.
So, and just to kind of run on that train of thought, the major scale is referred to as Ionian. If I know how to spell it. So already we know 2 different modes, which is pretty cool. Yeah, a lot of time modes kind of intimidate people, but Ionian mode and Aeolian mode. And yeah, as we clarified before, Aeolian is the same as the natural minor. So, all I need to do is play from A to A using the C major scale, and then I've got my natural minor. This is my natural minor. Okay, so I'm just using the building blocks of the C major scale. Nothing special, you know? Rather than sort of working out tone, semitone, tone, semitone. You know, you can work that out. You can, you know, the minor scale will have its own formula, but I prefer to just reference everything back to the major scale because it makes life a lot easier. You don't have to overcomplicate things. You only have to learn technically 12 scales, and then from that you will learn your minor scales. But if I play A to A with C major in mind, I will inevitably play an A natural minor. Harmonic minor, raise the 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's my 7. I'm going to raise it. And there's my harmonic minor. And our melodic minor, in a theoretical context, you raise the 6 and 7 and then naturalize them on the way back. So F sharp, G sharp, A, and then they return back to the natural minor on the way back. Yeah, go for it.
I don't understand why that change between like going up and then going down is important.
You know what? I don't really know either.
Okay, because it's always been taught to me, and I'm like, why though? Why do I need to be able, like? Because they're like, oh, can you please sing or play melodic minor? I'm like, sure, I know which notes to sing, but how is this relevant to any practical application of music?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm sure someone watching will maybe know the answer.
Please, if anyone out there has any idea.
That being said, the melodic minor is also sometimes or maybe always referred to as the jazz minor. And in the jazz context, you actually don't naturalize on the way back. So you keep it. You keep them raised. Yeah, good question. Never questioned it. Good to question things, though. Cool, so there are 3 minors. Harmonic minor, natural, melodic, with our change on the way back. Generally speaking, if you're playing them with your right hand, you want to go 1, 2, 3, and then tuck the thumb under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then make sure you reverse that on the way back. The left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. You go over with the 3rd finger. Cool. All right. So within each major scale, so let's just look at some other major scales, for example. We're going to go left in the scale of fifths, which I think is referred to as a scale of, like, cycle of fourths or something. It's a scale of fifths, cycle of fifths. I'm going to go back to F, which in sort of jazz world will generally refer to relationships of keys in fourths than fifths. So generally speaking, jazz musicians will look the other way around than in a fifth relationship. Classical music will kind of refer more to it in a sort of fifth relationship, whereas jazz music will generally be looking at it from a fourth. So C to F is a 1 to 4 relationship, and it's going left in the cycle of fifths, which means if I'm going left by 1 notch, I add 1 flat to the key. But if I didn't really know that and I just knew my formula, I would start with F, go tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. There's my F major. So if I had to ask you, if you feel like jumping in with an answer, what would my relative minor, what would it begin on?
D.
D. Yeah, awesome, great. Six degree, yeah? So I like looking at it this way because you already know the notes of the F major scale. All you need to do is just play the F major, but start on a different note. Okay, it shouldn't really be too complicated. You're just using the same building blocks, but beginning and ending on a different note. As far as the natural minor is concerned, natural minor is probably the most, this is such a subjective opinion, but the most boring. It doesn't have the most opinion of those minor scales. The other minor scales have a bit more of an opinion or a personality, whereas the natural minor is just sort of a sort of filtering down of the major scale. This is for my ears anyway. My ears sort of perceive it that way. So there's my D natural minor. Then I will raise the 7th for harmonic minor. And then I will raise the 6th and 7th. And return back on the D minor. Cool, so that's F. And then if I want to go back again, build it on the 4th, I'd start on B flat. And then I go. Obviously with prior knowledge, I am aware that that's a B flat major scale, but I can check. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And then I can work down 3 semitones, 1, 2, 3 to G minor. That's G natural minor, harmonic, and melodic, which I have the least practice at playing. Cool. All right. Let's just touch on chords for a second, because within each major scale, each scale degree can be harmonized. To harmonize a melody is to give it extra notes. Okay, so this can really be great for anyone wanting to create a cappella pieces like vocal arrangements and stuff. So what you do is there is a legitimate formula for this, but for those that are a bit more kinesthetic or visual with learning, all you need to do is play one scale degree, skip the next, play the next one, skip the next one, play the next one, and then you get the sort of the fundamental chord associated with that note. In other words, you could look at it as scale degree 1, scale degree 3. Generally, scale degrees are written with like a little arrow. C, D minor. So minor chords can be referred to with a little mi or min, or sometimes a minus sign. So I could complete this table. Right now it's scale degree 1, 3, 5, and then it's going to be 2, 4, and 6, and 3, 5, and 7, and 4, 6, and 1, and 5, 7, and 2. I don't usually think like this, and so it takes me a little while. 6, 1, and 3, and then 7, 2, and 4. Okay, I don't really think of it like that, but you know, if you want to think about it like that, that's fine too. Okay, so it's just about understanding the scale degree relationship to the actual key you're working in. So if I'm playing a 2, 4, 2, 4, 6, I know that I'm playing a 2 chord relating to C, and that can be relevant when sort of playing a particular progression. But if I have a melody that is on the A, for example, and the chord of the piece is on a D minor, and I want to harmonize that, I would harmonize around that A. I could, my choice whether I want to harmonize below it or above it. Okay, so I can actually fill out the rest of the chord with the scale degree 4 and 2. Generally speaking though, I'm gonna think about it in its parallel major. So when you have a parallel major or minor, going back to relative, right? So the relative minor of C is A. The parallel minor of C is C minor. So relative minor of C is A. So it relates to C. The parallel minor is more looking at it from like kind of parallel universe. I don't know how you want to look at it, but it relates to the actual key that you're playing. So if I wanted to play C minor, C minor does relate to E flat, that's fine. But if I said to play if I just said play C minor, you'd relate it to E flat if that's how your brain works, to be honest. Alternatively, this is the other way of looking at it, and I'm sort of sidetracking here a little bit. You can look at the minor scale with flat third, flat six, flat seven. This is looking at it from a parallel perspective. From the perspective of, well, how does it relate exactly to its parallel major? So I've got my C major. How do I make the major scale a parallel minor? So I flatten the third, flatten the six, flatten the seven. And now I've got a natural minor. This is just two different ways of looking at the same kind of concept. If I want to make it a harmonic minor, flatten the third, flatten the sixth. And then of course, if I want to make it a melodic minor, I just flatten the third. Done. It's a different way. It's just a different way. I personally prefer just knowing all your major scales and then just working out your relative minor from that. It works for me. Okay, so you find what works for you. But generally speaking, when I started playing piano, I was like, well, if I learn all the major scales, then technically I know most scales. So, singers like to look at things in more of a sort of a flattened third, six, seven way. They like to sort of understand how the actual scale is constructed rather than relating it to another scale. Because I guess from a piano perspective, I can visually see the notes that it contains, whereas for a singer, they actually have to understand the sort of formula and what the actual scales are actually doing. Anyway, so what I'd encourage you to do is go to each scale and work out the chord that is associated with each note. For C major, it's really easy. You just have to skip a note, and then you've got your basic triad. Okay, triad being a type of chord. Okay, specifically a 3-note chord. Try 3. And the formula is the same for every major scale. If you do this, you get a major chord, minor chord, minor chord, major chord, major chord, minor chord, diminished chord. Okay, so we'll sort of wrap up by sort of just explaining the fundamentals of those 4 types of chords. I'll talk about a 4th chord anyway. So you can do this with any scale. You can go F major. All I'm doing is skipping 1 scale degree and then jumping to the next. So there's 2 ways of learning chords. You can just learn every major chord and every minor chord, every diminished chord and every augmented chord, which is wonderful. That's great. Irrelevant of key, you just learn the chord, because the chord and the key, the key is just a way of organizing the chords, really. The chords will be the same regardless. Or you can learn the chords in the key that you're playing, which can be a really good analytical tool if you're learning a key in F major and you actually want to understand how all the chords relate, or you want to improvise in F major, you like to play chords within that scale. You can, if you have more intimacy with the key, you can learn 7 odd chords relative to that key. So therefore, it's a different way of learning based on the intimacy you have with the key. I think growing up, I was more like, well, I'll just learn as many chords as I can, irrelevant of what key they're in, because I just want to know what they are, So I'll be like, F sharp, great, G sharp, or A flat. Of course, there is a bit of a relationship between those 2 chords. But if we understand the chords, and then we get a song like Lean on Me, An incredibly simple progression. And when the chords are playing, when the notes and the content when the notes and the content are fundamentally a part of the key that they're playing from, we refer to that as diatonic. So I might refer to that chord progression as a diatonic chord progression. Diatonic meaning of the key. There's no dissonance, there's no altered notes. The chord progression that's being played is fundamentally a part of the key that it exists in. There's no sort of, there's no jazz really. Cool. So, the fundamentals of the chords. So we've got 4 basic chords. Major chord, major, minor, augmented, diminished. Okay. So to understand the makeup of chord, we have to get a basic understanding of the distances between each note. It's much easier to refer to the distances in terms of intervals, but we haven't really touched on intervals, so technically we do not know what they are. But we can still measure the semitones between each note. There's no issue there. So I start with my first note, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then between the second note and the third note, 1, 2, 3. So major 4 and 3, minor 3 and 4, augmented is 4 and 4, diminished is 3 and 3. Okay. So that's one way to look at it. 4 and 3, 3 and 4, augmented 4 and 4, diminished 3 and 3. Of course, you know, the major and the minor are an inverse of each other. Okay, so as you have 4 and 3, the minor is 3 and 4. But also the minor is just a flattened third. Okay, so going back to knowing that this in C major, our major chord is 1, 3, and 5. Okay, and I always refer to the scale degrees as 1, 3, and 5, irrelevant of what key we're in. 1, 3, 5. That's why that exercise before was a bit confusing. 1, 3, 5, major, and then flattened third, minor chord. So that's one way of looking at it, just knowing those numbers. When we touch on intervals, you can actually go, oh, well, that's a major third and that's a minor third. Okay. Or more importantly, the distance between 1 and 5 is a perfect fifth. And the perfect fifth doesn't actually change because it doesn't have a major minor counterpart. But the other way is to just know your major chords. And it can just be very helpful to just go through chromatically. Do know that all you need to do is just move next door. And if you keep all the distances relative, you'll play a major chord. Okay. Except for that second last one. So major chord. To create an augmented chord, I raise the fifth. Then I come back to major. To create a minor chord, I lower the third. To create a diminished chord, I lower the third and I lower the fifth. So you could also look at it as 1, 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1, 3, sharp 5, 1, flat 3, flat 5. And of course, with practice, comes retention and then the ability to call upon these chords without having to work it out like that. All right. Probably got another minute. So, you have any questions? Queries? Your teacher brain's going, I must ask questions because you know how it feels.
I was just going to say the idea of using like parallel major and minor scales to harmonize and things like that. Like, I know you didn't go through it, but you started to talk about it a little bit. I would like to touch on that at some point in the future because that's something I don't really understand, but I understand that it's useful in writing music.
So did you sort of relate to that idea of like having a melody and wanting to harmonize it?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So in the next class, maybe you're able to come on Thursdays?
Not at the moment. I will be away for a little while, so yeah. It's not an urgent thing.
Just trying to think of an example. I'll just leave you with this as like a little, I don't know, teaser or something. The fundamentals of harmonizing a melody. Say, for example, I want to create a choral arrangement of whatever this is, all I really want, which I probably would never do. Let's pretend the chord is a B flat, not a B flat 5, because that makes it a little less, it makes it a bit harder to work with. So I've got a B flat chord. Great. What I would do, very fundamental, okay, very basic. I would look for the chord tones in the melody. Chord tones are any tones or notes or scale degrees that actually pertain to the chord that the bar or the composition consists of. So I'd have to look for a B flat, a D, and an F. Okay? So first glance, I can already see two Ds.
Mhm.
If I was doing like a piano arrangement of this and I just wanted to harmonize that D really quickly, I would play the D, and then I would occupy. I would play every other note in the B flat chord. So I'd play an F, a B flat, and an F.
This is the kind of idea where everyone starts on the C, and then like the
Yeah.
next two notes, other people play the third
Yeah.
and the fifth of the. Yeah, that I understand.
And just as like a little kind of like, if you had a bit more knowledge of kind of basic kind of gospel harmony, and with my pop understanding of how to harmonize vocals, I would actually harmonize a C minor on that C. That's because I kind of know diatonically what will work with that C, and because it's a passing note, it's actually it's an anticipated or suspended note, so it's not super important. Although it's on a strong beat, you don't want to harmonize something too weird on that. Otherwise, we get something a bit strange. Or you could, if you want, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Okay.
Anyway, we can do a lot more work on that. We can sort of look at some lead sheets and how to harmonize gospel stuff and soul stuff and basic triadic harmonizations. This is a good example, actually. Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Well, if you're watching on the stream,